A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day to everyone present here today. A very warm welcome to OPassion Singapore Malaysia Global. My name is Jeannie Tan, your host today. OPassion was formed in November 2020 and run by a group of dedicated host team members. We had our first trial webinar on the 23rd of September 2021, and our first public webinar was on the 30th of September under the mentorship of Dr. Bill Williams. We meet on every Thursday. The mission of OPassion is to ignite passion for humanity, to nurture mindset and leadership for passion and OBLAS, and to form passion groups for good causes. And today we have our speaker, who is none other than Dr. John Jongwen, and we can't wait to hear him speak.
Let me have the privilege to introduce the speaker. As Jeannie says, none other than Dr. John Ajongwen. He is no stranger to us. He has spoken many times with us here. But today's topic is very interesting, as what he mentioned, generational wealth that we are going to be acquiring. And exactly what Mr. Ash Mufara is saying, it's not creating, but it's acquiring wealth. So Dr. John, he is educated in what you call chemical and biochemical engineering, but he also spent 20 years in the pharmaceutical industry in various companies in global projects. But one of his pet subjects is about wealth creation, debt elimination, wealth protection, legacy planning, strategies, etc. In wealth distribution. Today's topic, as is mentioned in the avatar, is about trust, TRUST, and how it works towards wealth control and preservation, especially for this wonderful movement that we are participating, which is gathering wealth, acquiring wealth to make the world a better place. Dr. John says ONPASSIVE is a beacon of good for humanity. Dr. John, take as long as you like, be it interactive or just teaching and training us.
Oh my God.
We are all ears, really.
Okay. A good. For some reason now I cannot just see everyone, but that's fine. I know you are here. Um, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody. I hope you can hear me clear right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, very clear.
Okay, great. So I really this as I mentioned before we started, Mr. Kumaran, I really I really appreciate you for that technology. If this is what we're into, some of us who never really had baby pictures who like to know how you can recreate and rewind how we look like when we were little babies, so we can keep for the future generations. But everything said, this has been like really a journey for not only for me, but I hope for all of us in ONPASSIVE. And it continues to be a journey that we all really need to enjoy, because if we look at, for some of us who've been here, 4 or 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, or whatever, the friendships that we have created, the families that we have met and created, really those are the lasting legacies that this massive opportunity of ONPASSIVE has really brought to us, and we really need to enjoy it. So I was reading a book, and I said it would be interactive, and I'm going to actually paraphrase a couple of paragraphs and sentences from the book I'm reading, because it really brings out some of the things that I would like us to talk about. And I remember in the very introduction of the book, it says our health, education, life experiences, family, friends, personal and business relationships, physical fitness, spiritual beliefs, and the overall quality of life are all aspects of our life that can and should be viewed of as markers of wealth. So, we have an African proverb that says that your wealth is your people. And when you listen to all of these statements here, talking not only about the traditional thoughts that we have in our minds when we think about money or think about assets as wealth, our health, our education, life experiences, friends, families, relationships, even our physical fitness and our spiritual beliefs are all markers of wealth. So the more that we're able to develop these, the more we can say we are wealthy. And while in the secular world, we look at assets as the key elements, our ability to be able to control and preserve these relationships or this wealth becomes very important. So when we're going through this discussion, I just want you to keep this at the back of your minds as we go through. And one of the fundamental aspects about wealth, or as people would refer to it as estate planning, is really how do we preserve these assets. And before we really dwell into estate planning, just something that I had picked as a historical perspective was that when you come to what we know today as estate planning, there are really three phases of it. The very, very first phase, again, based on the readings I found, was between 12 and 1700 AD. And the focus of that during Western civilization was really on preserving land or preserving farms, so that when the owner of that land passed, then they wanted to make sure that those lands ended up um, in the hands of the family. So if you look at, say, medieval England, you see that the landowners are probably the wealthiest people, because they were able to actually make sure that the land stayed within the family, or the farms stayed within the family, and they tried as much as possible to put plans in place so that the future generations would actually manage that property properly. The descendants still had to work hard to protect, to preserve the land, and obviously make sure that the land still stayed productive. Whenever there were droughts or whenever there were natural disasters, at least the land was still there to produce the crops, and then pass it over to the next generations. So that is really where the early phases of estate or asset preservation started. And then we moved to the next phase that I found was during the Crusades. And why this was important was that we had like a lot of these noblemen who would go off on these huge crusades with armies. But then again, think about it, being nobles, they owned real estate, they owned a lot of land. And what these people tended to do was, how can I make sure that I actually preserve this land for the benefit of my beneficiaries, that is their children, their spouses, and mainly their wives in that situation, and whoever they chose. And in most of those cases, these noblemen would actually choose like either a trusted friend, or they'll choose somebody that they would temporarily hand over those assets to, so that those people will take care of them for the benefit of the beneficiaries, because again, they did not know whether they're going to make it back alive. However, this type of handshake situations sometimes backfired, because when these noblemen came back, the people to whom these assets had been entrusted, maybe they found out that this is a profitable, piece of real estate, and some of them really ended up refusing to give the land back, and the courts had to step in and really try to resolve the situation, which is what then led to what we call today the trust laws. And most of those trust laws came by because they wanted to make sure that when that person handed over those assets to the person that they actually appointed to take care of them, then there was a way that either they themselves could get back that land, or that the person that is taking care of those assets ended up not being the owner of those assets, and kept them. So the laws started being created. And one of the things I found out, of course, if you think about it, starting from medieval England, is that a lot of what we call the estate or the trust laws that we use now, they basically find their roots from the Anglo-Saxon um, history. So when we talk about the situation, or the setup like in the United States, we talked about it like in South Africa, as one of our colleagues was talking earlier, or here in Singapore, Malaysia, which were all countries that at one point or the other had a lot of this British influence. You see that the fundamentals of these laws are about the same, but then the interpretations vary a bit. So one of the things I noticed again was that in general, when we talk about trusts, when we talk about estate planning, the rules across most of the world, they tend to be kind of similar, but then the details, as we say, the devil is always in the details, they are different. So what I'm going to do is really go through and say, okay, why do we even want to bother talking about estate planning? So we know that when it comes to many of us and a lot of people, they will think about it and say, okay, you know what? Why do I even need to bother? I don't have a lot of assets. So I'll wait until when I have accumulated a lot, and then I will try and see if I can create some sort of a plan to take care of it. And the result is that a lot of people put this for, some later time. And in most cases, it could either be because they lack the knowledge, they think it's too costly, or they just say, this is still time, and I'm going to focus on this at a later time. Unfortunately, I am involved in the financial services area, and I deal with a lot of life insurances. I deal with planning on long-term care and or chronic illness, or even final expense insurance here in the United States. And this last bullet, really, I hear it from a lot of people who just say, you know what, I think I still have time. I'm going to think about it maybe down the road. But life normally doesn't play out as we plan. So one of the things that we need to remember is that, especially for those of us here in the United States, and I would say based on the readings that I found, like in Singapore and Malaysia, every one of us has a plan, whether it's one that you've written for yourselves or it's one that the courts have already put in place for you. So if you don't have one for yourself, chances are that if something were to happen to us, the system will step in. And whenever the system steps in, they normally don't do what is probably in your best interest, although they try to, but you end up that most of the time the end results are not what you planned. And I think I was sharing at one of the webinars that we attended earlier this week, and I was just naming a few people, that were quite wealthy, but they ended up not actually having this type of estate plans in place. The latest one that I think I remember was some of this Boseman, who was the main actor in the Black Panther movies about a few years ago. And this young guy died. He had a will, which he said that his mother was going to take half, and his father was going to take, and the wife was going to take half of his assets. And when they established that he had like $3.8 million, any one of us who just do that math and say, okay, the mom should have 1.9 and the wife would have 1.9. But because all those assets were not properly planned and protected, they had to go through probate courts. And when by the time the courts were done, the wife had 1.15 million, the mother had 1.15 million. You add those two, that it comes up to 2.3 million. So you ask me, where did the rest go to? The rest did not end up with those two individuals. It ended up with the lawyers and the probate courts. So when it comes to asset protection or estate planning, this is something that we need to actually know. And I remember attending a training where one of the attorneys who did the training asked us in the training whether who actually thought it was important to do estate planning. I would say about 50% of us had our hands down. And at the end of the day, he asked the question, who of you has like a mortgage or a car or have some, property that you think it's yours? And we had 100% of the hands up. And he said, okay, so if I ask you to just sign off all those assets to me or to just donate them to somebody that you don't know, are you going to do that? Everybody said no. So he said, okay, think about it, go back and actually start doing some estate planning, because by doing nothing, you have basically agreed to hand over your assets. So, as we said, estate planning is not just about having those wealth preservation strategies in place. It is much more beyond. It is peace of mind. It is making sure that you know where your assets are going to end up, and making sure that the loved ones we have, and when I talk about loved ones, I'm talking about family members, I'm talking about charities, any organization or individuals that you actually think you would want your assets to end up with should really be considered. And just as an aside, I remember during one of our presentations here, I had made a statement in passing that, many of us probably have ONPASSIVE accounts that we have purchased for family members, and we need to actually start thinking about what is it that we're going to do with this ONPASSIVE accounts when we go live. Are we going to just get this or accounts passed over to them and then hope that they do the best with them, or are we going to actually put some structures in place? Because many of us who have been attending these webinars that have been in the kitchen, seeing how ONPASSIVE has been developing, we have a completely different mindset from those who purchased their founder member, or paid for their founder positions and left, or stayed out and just waiting. So you really need to make sure that there is some structure in place to make sure that what you intended is actually what you end up with. So when we talk about it, what I want to just touch very briefly on some sort of a definition, so that when we talk, we're talking about the same thing, because the language varies from one place to another. And the first thing is to really say, when we look at it as, and while we're talking about estate planning, and we're going to come into trust as one of the tools for estate planning, what is really estate planning? And this is a definition that I just pulled off from one of the websites that I was researching on. And it talked about, it is a process of anticipating and arranging. You are just, so it's not just doing it, you're thinking ahead, you're arranging the management and disposition of your estate throughout our own lives. So it's not like when you're gone, when and if somebody becomes incapacitated, and in the afterlife. So I still want I share this again to a lot of people at I think one or two webinars, that one of the co-founders of the financial company I'm associated with, it's a very wealthy guy and very, very philanthropic. He shared with us that he has basically planned his estate in such a way that his generations for the next 370 years will be well taken care of. 370 years. So this is somebody who has actually anticipated and planned. So obviously, we don't know how the world is going to look like in 370 years, but there are some parameters that we can put in place to make sure that even with the changes, the people that are managing those assets for us can actually still work within those parameters, or as people say, you are still able to control your assets beyond the grave. Additionally, you know, when we do our estate planning, it really starts you need to think about charitable giving. You need to think about taxes. You need to think about those future generations. And one of the biggest advantages or reasons why people set up trusts or some of these instruments, especially here in the United States, is to do with how to avoid or mitigate the impact of, inheritance taxes and so on. And when I was doing my research, I found some very interesting piece of literature here for my brothers and sisters in Singapore that, Singapore sort of abolished the inheritance tax for any deaths that occurred after 15th of February 2008. So basically, all of you guys here, because we are alive after 15th of February 2008. So that is not a big consideration, but there are other tax considerations which would drive you to want to create estate plans. And you would find out that because of the ecosystem that exists in Singapore as one of the premier financial hubs in the world, estate planning and setting up of all these instruments is probably no it's set up better than you find anywhere else in the world. So when we look at the general benefits, then what are some of them? Why should we even bother? One, the first thing is you are the one who's in control. You are literally saying, this is my asset and this is what I want to do with it. And if you create that document properly, then your wishes will always be adhered to. There are taxes that are involved, the transfer taxes. I think we talked about, Mr. Allen talked about how they are being not circumvented, but how people are mitigating them in South Africa. The ability to plan for philanthropy. One of the biggest reasons that we are here in ONPASSIVE is to help uplift humanity. And what you want to do is not only uplift humanity today, but to make sure that even when you're no longer there, this ONPASSIVE is multi-generational. You want to be able to continue those philanthropic goals that you have. And when you continue them without having in place a good structure, then it's not going to help you. And then obviously the idea of protecting the family wealth. And you will see that I've highlighted in red there that some of the instruments that people use include trusts, life insurance, which is a very, very critical component when you deal with trust as well, and then creating some limited liability entities. And the whole purpose is to make sure that your family is in control, and they preserve the wealth. Very quickly, some terminology that you come across when you're going through your literature, you hear words like grantor, creator, or settler. Basically, in plain English, that's the person that set up the trust. And in general, they cannot be the trustee or the beneficiary, except when the trust becomes revocable or irrevocable, which is another term that people use a lot. The trustee, if you remember, I talked about the medieval situation where the noblemen would appoint somebody to manage their estate for them. The trustee basically has the role of preserving and managing that estate. But because of those earlier problems they had, they actually, when you create your trust, you have what they call the trust deeds or the trust documents in a simple way. And the trustee has the fiduciary duty to manage that estate according to the trust document. And if the trust ever gets taken to court, in most cases, the judges, all they do is they look at the trust documents. One of the things I found looking at Singapore specifically is that the high net worth actually use what they call private trust companies to be the trustees of their companies. This is a very, very, very powerful setup. And I think I have one slide which I found which talks about what these private trust companies are. But for those of you in Singapore, Malaysia, I think this is an area that you can just do some background reading on what these private trust companies are, what they do. They are not trusts in themselves, but they are companies that are set up to manage your trust. So just keep that at the back of your mind. And as you do your due diligence, look into them. And then the third party in a trust typically is the beneficiary. That's the person that is going to receive the distributions of that trust based on the trust documents. Then, as you go through, you look at your information, you'll find that the words trust, trust fund, trust account, they get mentioned in different literature. I would say they're basically interchangeable. So when you hear them, then you should consider that they're talking about the same thing. So what was I able to find about the main purpose of trust, say in Singapore? There are quite a few of them. The ones that I highlight in blue are those that I think would be important for those of us, at least within ONPASSIVE, to be able to focus on, but then the others still apply. So the first one, obviously, is the idea of being able to manage those assets for the benefit of the younger children or your beneficiaries. That brings in the idea of the financial management. And then the preservation. As I said, and it's not only in Singapore, but the general thing that happens is that somebody writes a will and then they say, okay, when I'm not here, give 10% to this kid, 15% to that, 20% to that. And then those beneficiaries, they don't really have an appreciation for what the how you accumulated those assets, and they take them and okay, maybe buy a fast car here, go gamble in a casino, take a nice vacation somewhere. And history has shown that in most cases, some of these go through a probate, which takes some, and some of them actually end up that by the time it gets to the third generation, most of that wealth is gone. So having like a trust or an estate that would actually preserve them and then distribute to those beneficiaries and the generations to come become very important. This one here, it's really saying that even companies use them, for retirement planning for their employees. So that's why I did not highlight this as blue, because I think the next two here, employee benefits. If you work with a lot of companies, they would either have your pensions or they have whatever benefits that the companies give. A lot of them tend to put these savings in some sort of trusts or in annuities, because those are instruments that would actually make sure that they are safe for the benefit of all the future employees to come. Then the asset protection. Again, one of the things I learned is that if you actually have your assets in a trust, at least in Singapore, they are not claimable by creditors in the event that the person becomes bankrupt. So just 1 second, let me just put up some background noise here. Okay, sorry about that. And then we also found that trust can actually become a very powerful vehicle for investing. And here we're looking at it that you can actually create a trust almost to be like a vehicle, like a company. And instead of having like an LLC, you can create like a trust to run your business. And then obviously you can put your shares, you can put your stocks, you can put the knowledge or whatever in trust. And finally, or maybe not the last, this idea of charity. This to me is really the vehicle that we should be thinking of when we're thinking of our O Bless projects. Why? Because most of the trusts that we create and use them for philanthropic purposes, you, the trustees or the people that set up the trust, you decide which type of philanthropic organization to support. And I think when I was sharing to the people in the United States the other week, when we focused on private family foundations, which basically are the charitable trusts here, or what they call 501c3. You can have them both public and private, but the private ones are the ones that we should be considering ourselves with. Those ones can really, really help families multi-generation wise, because when you create it, this includes your family members. So you start building that mindset of philanthropy in your children. And then obviously when they take over, they will continue to build that same mindset in the generations to come. So it becomes really a powerful way that you can create something for your family that will last for generations. And obviously, we talked about tax. It's literally, I don't know, wherever you go, whether it's here in the US, in most of the European countries, trusts typically the reason a lot of people set them up is because of the tax advantages that come in it. And so when we look at it, then for you guys in the Singapore, Malaysia area, the couple of things that I picked up as the core purposes that you want to consider when you're looking at putting together a trust for yourself: the wealth protection, confidentiality, succession planning, and then the tax implications. So you can look at this a bit more and see where they go, how they fit into your own vision of what you want to do going forward. But I found this, again, whether when we're talking in the United States, the same also applied true, that when it comes to creating trust, actually looking at these four key elements become really important. So really, to summarize the reasons why somebody wants to go thinking about putting trust in place, there are two key critical things. One is to be able to control the wealth, and the other is to be able to preserve. And you will see that in this definition, the idea of ownership is missing. And this is really where the mindset shift comes when it comes to trust, because me and you would say, I have worked very hard for this. I want to actually make sure I own it. That idea of ownership becomes very critical. But when you're dealing with true wealth, it becomes a disadvantage for you to be the owner. Because remember what our CEO had told us, we will one day be the hunted. And when you are the hunted, it's that you're hunting something because you know it has um, another thing that you want. So if we start accumulating wealth and people are hunting us because they want that wealth, then what you want to do is you want not to be the owner, because once you're not the owner, you're the target, and you need some other entity, a separate legal entity to own it. And the trust is a separate legal entity from yourself. They own those assets, but if properly structured, you or somebody on your behalf or your family members actually would control it, they'll preserve it, and they can do what you plan to let them do. So basically, the control, you specify the terms and the conditions in that trust, when things will be distributed, how they'll be distributed. And I remember again, just referring back to that um, president of the company, he had four key areas that he focused on for his control of his assets for those 370 years. One, making sure that the members of his family are supported in their education, both formal and informal. Two, supporting some of those family members to be able to get like some sort of a home or a residence, providing some sort of support for a marriage, and he defined how he wants a marriage interpreted in his own family. And then the fourth way was really trying to make sure that if any of the family members wanted to do any business, then how that trust would support that individual to be able to start a business. Basically, that trust became a bank to support their family. And to crown it up, he actually specified that that trust would actually take a lot of life insurance policies on all the beneficiaries, so that when they pass away, the death benefits from the life insurance would help supplement the income that has been distributed. And as a result, this thing will just keep going on in perpetuity. And then talking about the preservation, it provides better protection from creditors and lawsuits. Um, and you saw my sub bullet there that it is not claimable by creditors if the settler is sued or the bankrupt. And in some cases, I would say that even in cases of divorces and so on, um, they will they will not be affected. And then the additional ones that I put there, which apply globally, but again, this I was doing my research here mainly on Singapore, Malaysia area. Um, the idea of protecting young and vulnerable ones, especially people who have children with special needs, this becomes a very, very powerful tool for them. Obviously, the idea of probate, once if I put my assets in a trust and I pass away, I don't own those assets. Therefore, the courts have they have no duty trying to go disturb the trust, because it's not the trust that died. And then same thing when it's to deal with wealth transfer, that's where they come into play. And I think we talked about the issue of the protection from creditors. You can see the second sub bullet there, which says, in the event of a divorce, a trust asset intended for the beneficiaries, especially if it's in a non-revocable trust. So if I came in as a spouse and then I decided to leave, and I'm not the one of those beneficiaries, I cannot go disturbing the trust. I can sue you as my partner, but since the trusts are set up in a way that the assets are not considered mine, any matrimonial issues are not impacted. And here you get the word revocable and irrevocable. So as you go doing your due diligence, remember I shared some terminologies. I'm going to throw in maybe another 3 or 4 words here. The one is the grantor and non-grantor. A grantor or the settler or the creator, as I said, is the same person. That's the person that sets it up. You can set up your trust to be a grantor trust. That means I set it up and I am the owner, and I want to be managing it on a day-to-day basis. Those type of trusts typically are what we call revocable. Revocable means if I get up tomorrow and I don't like the people that I have in the trust, I can literally take their name out. I can change the terms any day, all the way till my last breath. And at that point, they become irrevocable, which means they cannot be changed. Or you can set up the trust right from the onset and say, this is irrevocable. If you put it as irrevocable, you as the grantor, you basically surrendered control of all your assets, and they are now owned by the trust, and you're no longer the owner. And because you are no longer the owner, those trusts typically are irrevocable, which basically says whatever you put in those trusts documents, you cannot just get up one day say, you know what, I'm going to call my attorney and change them. No, you as the person that set it up cannot change them. On that, depending on how it is created, you can actually have it put in a way that the beneficiaries could change some of those conditions based on parameters, and that's where you can maintain that control. Because if you are not one of the owners, you can be the beneficiary anyway and take part in changing it. So this is where talking to all the estate planning attorneys and CPAs and so on becomes important. But this training really is meant for us to understand the basics. So when you're sitting there and having a discussion with these people, the discussion becomes more like meaningful. The other thing that I just threw here, I think for some reason the heading is not coming, is just talk about what are some of the type of trusts that are out there. And a lot of names that are thrown around. I didn't really want to spend too much time on them, but to just tell you that when you go out there, they are really different type of trusts that you can set up for yourself. And I would say that the first maybe 4 or 5 that I hear are worth considering. The basically a testamentary trust is what I would call just setting up, like something that you want to have put in place with some triggers and say, okay, this is going to happen if something happens to me, and you just set and forget almost type. It's irrevocable. You don't want to be changing it. Private family trusts in Singapore and Malaysia area, those are really one of those that some of the ones that you need to be talking with your attorneys about, because this is where you want to start putting some of your stuff into your ONPASSIVE accounts. And you can actually see the second sentence says that it can be structured by a will, a declaration, and safeguards the trust from creditors during bankruptcy, exchange controls, hostile government authorities, or probate proceedings. I mean, hostile government proceedings, I sort of laughed at them, but it's one of the things that I would say you guys should look into. The revocable one I talked about, typically that should be something that you do along with your will, because you can be updating it with time. And then the irrevocable ones, if you have like a life insurance policy, you can put it in a, you can put the irrevocable life insurance trust as the owner of that, or the beneficiary of that life insurance. So it doesn't, the money doesn't go from you to your beneficiaries, but it goes from you to that trust, and then the trust can manage it in the way that you want them to do. And there are few others here, like again, we talked about number 6, the charitable trust. I would say, if nothing, the family trust, the charitable trust are the two really critical ones that we need to actually look at here. So this is like what I'll call a fire hose presentation of what I was able to find out about trusts, specifically with Singapore. But I remember when I started a few slides back, I talked about the trustee as the individual or the group or the company that manages um, the trust and, for the benefit of the beneficiaries. I found something very interesting for the case of Singapore, which is that private trust company, which literally you set up as a separate limited liability company, but they set for the sole purpose of actually managing a trust. And I haven't seen that in any other country actually, but I thought that this is something which really, for those of you in that area, you may it really is probably making a lot of us to start figuring out how to come that way, because they say the private trust companies are established with the sole purpose as acting as corporate trustee for a number of trusts, and it's created by the settler or individuals connected to the settler in the trust document. So when they create that company, you literally are taking yourself out of being the trustee also, and putting yourself in that trust company. There are lots of trust companies out there, and some really internationally recognized ones that manage trillions of dollars of trust assets. But I found this private one interesting because of the word private. And it actually says here that they really mean that it's where each beneficiary of the trust is connected to the person in relation to the settler of the trust. A person is connected to that person, to the settler, in respect to the following relationships. So just think about it. When you look at the list of people that can be used to create this private trust company, it's essentially telling you that if I set up a trust and I made it irrevocable and I put my assets in, I can then hand over that trust to be managed by a private trust company, which is set up by any of the people that I have listed in there. And the reason why I think the law did that was really to provide a lot of benefits for people, including the confidentiality. Again, talked about the control, the succession planning. And that way, you're not even saying that John is the trustee and afterwards, no, it's a company. And so you get continuity and ownership succession because it's a company that is managing this trust. We get into a situation that you can actually go ahead and manage these assets as a company, and that company could actually have me who created it as one of the administrators of that company. So you're still in control, but you are actually not in control. So I found this kind of intriguing, and I want to say, when you guys are doing your due diligence, I would actually advise that you actually find out from your attorneys which vehicles you can use for that purpose. And finally, when we're talking about trust and talking about the trustees, or whether it is the a private trust company that is going to actually manage the assets. Also think about other elements that need to be taken into account, like making sure that you have that trust is operating with the right banks, making sure that when you're transferring your assets into the trust, they are done the right way to avoid the same thing that you were trying to avoid in the first place, that is the tax implications. And in most cases, what people tend to do is they go to a bank. The bank gives them a banking relationship manager who recommends them to open a trust with their bank. And then that trust would fit your purpose for the time being. And as things begin to develop, you may find out that maybe that was not the right bank. It was probably too small. Um, as an example, if you're going to set up a trust and you're setting up a charitable trust and you're going to be receiving a lot of donations and income, as well as making some transactions, some banks would give you a limited number of transactions a month, and after that, they start charging fees. Some of them may actually have limitations as to international transfers that you can make. So when you're setting up your trust and you start looking at establishing the banking relationships, make sure there's enough flexibility put in your banking strategy that will allow that trust to be able to move from one bank to the other, or that the bank is big enough to be able to support your trust as it grows. Because we are in a journey, and that journey is supposed to just continue growing bigger. And look at what other best practices are out there, and finally make sure that whatever trust or banking or estate or corporate laws in your country, make sure that you are in compliance, because what you want to do is set up a vehicle that is going to be of beneficial to you today, beneficial to your family, beneficial to your beneficiaries in the future generations, and you don't want a situation where they will run into some complications because we did not think. And that's why in most cases I tell people you can go online and search how to do it yourself, or I would say there are some people that there are lots of companies that will do it for you. The guys that are here in the United States, when I talked, I said, I am actually um, working with two different companies. One of them has international exposure. One of them is more US based. And I told them I'm doing some research on those companies. I may be able to, just recommend one or two of them, but it is no substitute for you actually doing your due diligence and making sure that you do what is right for you. But my aim here today was really to make sure that I sort of expose each and every one of us that these are vehicles that are out there, these are tools that are out there, and as we are in this journey, let's take advantage of the time that we have in our hands and do a lot of due diligence. I'm going to pause here. Thanks again, Mabel, and the leadership here for giving me the opportunity to rant. And I hope that there was something beneficial here. Over to you, and I'm going to stop.
Thank you, Dr. Ajangwan, and thank you, Kumaran. Yeah, uh, I would think it's very comprehensive. We're going through. Anybody have any? Let's open up for anyone to ask any questions, be it for your country or for what we have heard. Let me see how many of us. Yeah, John. Yeah, Ginny, you want to help? John.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll start off. I just want to say thank you, Dr. John. I've only thought of this in general, this about wealth management, trust management. So this was so good today. I would thank you very much because I was able to see more specifically what this is all about. And so I just want to say I appreciate that. And it's made me realize that I, at some point, even need to look into it more. But what you laid out for us so clearly was very valuable and worthwhile information. So I thank you very much for that. I did learn a lot today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have Brother Paul. Is it Brother Paul? You raise your hand. Brother Paul? Yeah, Brother Paul? Oh, he cannot unmute. Okay, hold on.
Let me make him co-host.
Yeah.
Or you can make him co-host.
Did you see him?
Yeah, I see him. Let me make him co-host and it might be better.
Okay, done.
Done. Yeah, okay.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yes.
can.
Thank you very much, Dr. John, for the powerful presentation. I always love to be part of this presentation more than any other topical issues, because if each day I listen to it, I get more attraction and something that is already forming the direction and the line of action in me already, because of the complexities in family and cultural backgrounds. You know, there's a lot of victims, a lot of people, families, children becoming victim of circumstances because of lack of proper documentation and lay down principles like this. So I am seriously preparing for a full implementation of this as soon as we started, because I am not going to wait for any time. But right from the one I listened to Dr. John, it has been one of the things that refused to die down with me, and I pray that a lot of will be able to guide others as we continue, because there are so many distractions left and right that can take away our plans when it comes to finances. But if you are focused from the one with the relevant knowledge, it will be very difficult for one to be lost along the way. Thank you very much, Sister Mabel, and all the Singapore, Malaysia team for putting up this opportunity for us. Thank God that I remember today. I used to forget a Singapore webinar always. That is why I've not been attending, because most times before I know, the time has passed because of busy here and here. But last week and today, I was so fortunate that I could not miss, and I believe that going forward, I should be able to be part of it. Thank you once again, and God bless everyone.
Can I just break in again very quickly? I forgot to say, I wanted to mention, I took a lot of screenshots. I really like the way you had it laid out, and I took screenshots of everything you had up there for us.
I took some screenshots too. I took them too.
Thank you, Brother Paul, and thank you, John. I think I saw Brother Alan G earlier. Your hands was up. Alan G, are you still there, Alan? Brother Alan?
I think there is no mic. You close the mic for the non-speaker, the non-co-host. Mic, and you will be able to.
Alan G. Okay, now we go to Dr. Patience first. Dr. Patient? Because I cannot get Alan G.
I already make him co-host already. I already make him co-host.
Okay. Alan?
Well,
Alan, are you there?
Can you hear me?
yeah.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks, Dr. John. Thanks,
Yes,
Dr.
go
John.
ahead.
It was a thanks for the fantastic presentation. It's very informative. Just one question: how does one add your passive business to a trust? As because they're all in the personal name at the moment, so it's very difficult unless you once you put the money in and then you can start. That is my question.
No, I think that's a good question, Alan. And again, this is where I made mention that the way that the trust, the details are in the devil is in the detail. The very once you create a trust um with your attorneys or whoever it is, and then the next thing is to put your assets into that to fund the trust, or what you call put your assets into the trust. So there are different vehicles again depending on the different countries. You may actually have one option down the road, just talking options right here. But once you said yours and you're looking at the funding, the attorney would advise them the best. One option could be that maybe down the road, ONPASSIVE would actually give us the option of, um, you know, assigning who the owner of your business is. So your business now, once we go live, could be, LNG Technologies, and you could then decide that business is owned by your trust, for example. In that way, all the income and every asset and expenses are going through that. You may choose to, when I was talking to people in the US here, create like an LLC that will own that business, and then the trust becomes the owner of that LLC. And in that case, again, this is more US focused, but I think it will also apply to other countries. I would almost say create like a business that owns your own passive business, like an LLC or something, and then your trust becomes the owner of that business. The reason being that if for some reason somebody targeted your and sued your own passive business, not that it will happen, but I'm using it as an example, you don't want them to be affecting your trust. So let's say I have a car rental business, I have a real estate business that I set up with my own passive assets, I have my own passive account, and somebody decides to sue my real estate business. If I had all of those ones in the trust, then the person may be looking at the how much money is in the trust. But if that account ended up being owned by just that LLC, then the liability is only limited to that LLC, and you can protect your your trust. So that trust, you want to be like the shield, but the feeders of that trust, when you sit with your attorney, I think they'll give you the best advice as how to structure it. And that is the phase of your trust, which is called funding the trust. And it is how you set it up that you work with that expert to really finalize it.
Yeah, one of the things I've been with this company now for about 10 years, and they have various courses, and they had like an online course with it. And what they suggest that you create different trusts for different. If you have like a property trust, you have your family trust, which doesn't owe anything. There's got no money owing in that in your main trust, and you have secondary trusts for your business. Where you put maybe you buy property, or even your own private property goes into a separate trust. So it's not part of your family trust. There's always expenses with rates and services and taxes in your personal house, and you have a separate trust for your. If you're buying property or assets or this type of thing, you have a different trust for that, and they're all interconnected. So you transfer into your main trust, and there you distribute to the other, or from your money get profit from your other trust, it gets distributed to your main trust, which is where nothing is owned. It's all
Absolutely. That's what that I mean. That's what a lot of people are recommending. You have that what you call your mother trust or the family trust, the main trust. That is there to to own, control, manage, and distribute the assets. But they don't. If as much as possible, that trust should really not own a lot of these things directly. And as I mentioned, if you have a rental property, you don't want to take that rental property and dump it into your overall trust, because if a tenant then sues you for your rental property, the lawyers are looking at what is in the account of that trust. And if all your family wealth is in it and they find out that you got 100 million, what they're gonna do is they're gonna sue you like for 500 million, hoping that you negotiate down to 80. But if your rental property was in its own LLC or its own a real estate trust, and all it has there is $50,000, then the most that they can try to get is the $50,000. And if they go sue you for 5 million or whatever, you show the bank account of that trust, and that's where I talked about those that last slide. You have to show the bank account of those trusts, and they say that the maximum you got there is 50,000. Let them take the 50,000. You shut down that trust. You lose that one property. You still got your family protected in the bigger trust. So yes, and that's where once you get to again, Alan, what you're doing, excellent. Let's take the time and read all this information. But my advice and recommendation is when it comes to really executing it, look for the legal experts and the who will really make sure that they are following the law, because the amount of information you can do it yourself is just as much. I mean, what you pay is what you get.
Yeah. Now, also one of the things in South Africa, they say you've got to have an independent trustee who isn't part of your family or accountant. And if you want to do anything with the trust, you have email correspondence between them. So, for argument's sake, if you wanted to buy a vehicle and you've got tax liability, then you'll come back to you and say, no, there's tax coming due. You can't buy the vehicle now. You must first pay your tax. It works through a company. You've got a company that actually that actually sets up the trust and actually manages them as well. So you can work through them. So this is why.
Yes, and that's the one that I was sharing for our brothers in Singapore, Malaysia, that the private trust company would do that, because you are taking that control away from you and your family. But on top of that, there are a lot of international and really, really renowned companies that would actually manage trusts for us. So again, do the research, and when it's time, I mean, anybody that does a service for you, there's a fee. So when it's time, then you can reach out there, and they would be able to provide those expert services and give you that peace of mind.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
Jeannie, can I ask a couple of questions? Okay, Jeannie is muted. Okay. Okay, Jeannie is muted. Dr. John, I want to ask
Sorry, Mabel. Can we let Dr. Patience go first? Her hands is up quite long already.
Sure.
Dr. Patience, are you there?
Okay, let me make her co-host.
Hello?
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Sorry, I am also divided attention because this is work hour for me here. But Dr. John, thanks for that presentation. If you could use our tools and attach the file, if you don't mind sharing, people can click on download. I heard people were taking screenshots. You can download it. It's okay for you to share your presentation deck. I don't know. I know Sister Mabel and team is recording it as well, which I'm going to replay and watch because I was listening in 2 meetings. But let me tell you, every time I listen to this trust presentation, I learn a lot. That mindset of saying, giving somebody control of something, but you have control of it by what you ask them to put in place is something we all have to really switch our mindset to, which is hard for most of us. I always want to have control until we cannot have control. But the trust is actually protecting us. Even though it looks like we don't have control, we still have control. So thanks for making it very simple. And I know today you try as much as possible to make it Singapore centric and Malaysia centric, but the basic concept is the same. So I come to learn, and I have learned. Thank you, Mabel and Tim, for this platform. Sorry you have not seen me for a while because I actually have a meeting going on at the same time. Today I was going to just sneak in and out without you knowing I'm here, but I said I should put my voice, continue with this platform with the way you're going, continue educating us. It is really, really useful for us to be educated before the time comes. Because the scripture said, my people die because of lack of knowledge. We do not know, that's why we. And they say ignorance of the law is not, it's not you don't let go, right? So thank you for all the knowledge. I really want to just put my voice to appreciate everybody that goes out to do research. It's not a little small thing to do. And I think somebody said there is a course. You pay a lot of money for this course, but us in ONPASSIVE, we are blessed to have talent that we're learning this for free. That's the truth, right? Thank you, Brother Kumaran and team. Thank you for all the topics you put together. If you don't see me, sometimes in the background I just go quiet. Sometimes it's just not possible to me for joining you. I miss you guys so much, and I'm glad to see all of you. I'm going to shut my mouth. I don't have any questions because I don't even know the terminology of trust to ask questions yet, but I'm learning. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Mabel, you want to go ahead, or we have 2 more hands?
Go
Brother
ahead.
Vital,
Yeah, go ahead.
and then Raj, and then you. Okay,
Yeah, sure.
Brother Vital, please. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Vital.
Yes, thank you very much, Sister Mabel. Who's that calling? Jeannie? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Again, it's a pleasure being here on this Singapore Malaysia seminar. It's always a pleasure to be here. And it's always a pleasure to listen to Dr. John as he presents something that is very near and dear to my heart. And Dr. John, I have some comments and then a question, because people understand. I'm glad that you skew this towards Singapore, because the ones that we do here in the United States, we're talking about different laws and governing internal revenue. And so when you skew it towards Singapore, it's good so that they can do their due diligence wherever they are. But I think there are some generic terms that are international, and the word revocable and irrevocable, they are included in our trust. Grantor and non-grantor, they are included in our trust, regardless of where you are. But we also have to don't get it confused now, because sometimes it may be confused by the terminologies. Grantor and settler and trustor and creator, those are all the same things. So, don't get too confused when you see them used interchangeably. They are the same thing. One thing that you need to do is to do your due diligence and hire the best. Dr. John is just providing you with the basic stuff that you need to open your eyes and go to hire your own professional to guide you along the way. Because You know, the reason why poor people don't get involved in trust because it's a very expensive thing to
Mm.
it's very expensive. Oh, you're getting free knowledge here. You know, it's good trust. It can run up to anywhere from in the United States, anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 to create those trusts, and that's the reason why most of us get involved in wills and then you're at the mercy of the lawyer when it comes to probate. So you gotta, with all the asset that we are expecting from ONPASSIVE, we need to make sure it is protected. And one thing that you also need to understand is that, you know, there are a lot of trusts out there, and there's a lot of people, maybe individuals, talking about trust, and that's the reason why you have to do your due diligence, because your asset is not protected under certain trust.
Mm-hmm.
It is not protected, and not because the name is trust, because you think it's protected. It's not protected under certain trust. People can sue you and take everything away from you if the trust is revocable, or if the trust is grantor, right? So these are the things that we have to understand and make sure that when we go to our professional to set up things, that we have these terminologies, that we can ask these questions. Dr. John, one question I would like to ask you, you know, there's a lot of people in ONPASSIVE that have multiple accounts. You know, I've heard people say they have 100 and all these accounts, but each position is a business in itself. It's a business in itself. So explain to us, how do you go about setting up a trust that incorporate all these positions? Do you include them separately and set up a trust for every account, which it would be very, very expensive to do? Or you just incorporate everything under one umbrella?
I think that both strategies can be utilized, but when somebody starts going up with like lots of different accounts, you may find it easier to group them. There may be some people that have, let's say, 4 or 5 accounts that they had set up and said this was going to be for a charitable purpose or for extended family members. You could decide and create like one entity to actually hold those accounts, and then the accounts end up being owned by the trust. As I said, if you start getting to multiple hundreds and you want to go create different, like in the United States, what I call LLCs that will be tracking those, you may start, I know sometimes you may have like a holding company that will hold all of those separate entities together. And I think that is really a core that somebody needs to sit with like a CPA and have a discussion. But for me, I am seeing here that there might be some accounts that I see them as these are core ones that I want to use for my direct family. And those ones, I may put them in one group. There may be some that I am looking at community help or something, and I put them in another group, and then make sure that those ones then get owned by the trust. So the whole thing is to look at it and say, how much is the exposure? If you think that the exposure of having all your 5 accounts put under one company is something that you can deal with for now, this is what John when is thinking. I'm not saying it's a recommendation, is that I'll probably just put all of them initially as one, and then as the business grows and I start seeing that maybe the accounts are beginning to generate significant income and I don't want to put all the eggs in one basket, then you can start looking at splitting them up. But don't start off from day one and go spending tens of thousands of dollars to create things that are going to be a nightmare for you to manage anyway. So I will start like very few, and then we start monitoring and seeing the trajectory of things. And you could always, for with any company that you have, you can always change the ownership of that company. You can always refile the articles of that company and take it out from its existing business.
So that way, Dr. John, with the old verify, you only need one account to begin with, one bank.
Right. That's what I'll do. And if it allows for that purpose, then just funnel all the others to it. Maybe a year or two down the road, you see how they're doing. You can then consider. And you remember Ash had mentioned at some point that when in the future the accounts will be willable, and you could then once we reach the bridge at that point, you may be able to change things right from within ONPASSIVE. So let's get this knowledge. Don't go spending. Just let's keep building on it. And then, as I keep telling anybody, get your CPA to get an affiliate account, because the best person that's going to manage your account is the person that's also benefiting from ONPASSIVE. They'll not try to steal from you, so they will help.
And Dr. John, also it's important that everybody knows that not every CPA is a trust accountant.
Absolutely.
So we have to seek them out very diligently, and because you get in trouble, and we are in this business. We are in this business, and we need to know when to start. How do you set it up so that we can start into OBless? So that's a whole different presentation you may have to come back and do.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Bravitel, you made a very, very valid statement there about the capabilities of the different people. I mean, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I am involved in the financial services area, and I do life insurances here in the United States, and you'll be shocking how many times I sit down and talk to somebody and they tell me, "Thank you, John. That is very valuable information. Let me talk to my financial advisor and get back to you." And I had a discussion with somebody and I said, just out of curiosity, how long have you had your financial advisor? And they told me they've been working with that financial advisor for 16 years. And I said, for 16 years, this person has never talked to you about this particular thing I'm just sharing with you. And you want to then go have a discussion with them. Do you think this guy was just wicked or what? I said, chances are that this was not their line of business. Why don't we have a three-way conversation with that individual to see whether what we're talking makes sense? And that the chances are that because that financial advisor whom I found out was just his tax accountant never talked about this type of things to them, their conclusion is that it's either not true or it doesn't exist. So that point which you just made, again, doing that due diligence, we have one of the ladies that on one of the platforms had given us a list of like 50 questions to ask your financial professional or to ask your banker. Interview them. They're managing your funds for you. You have to, they're going to be your employees. You're the one paying them. So just think about whether you walk into a company and then the owner will just take you to start working day one without going through an interview. No. So you interview them and make sure that they understand what it is you're talking about and that they're going to provide you the service you want before you go spending money. So thank you for that point.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Sister Jeannie, for allowing me to speak.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Vital. That was a very good question. And thank you, Dr. John. Okay, we have Brother Raj. Brother Raj, you're back. Your hands was up just now. Okay, wait, let
Yes,
me make
yes,
you
I come
co-host.
back. Yeah.
You can speak. Okay, good, good. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, great sister Jinita, inviting me. Wow. Very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The galaxy of intellectual. Wow, what a great session. This is need of power in 21st century of the world because financial literacy, wealth preservation, we have to understand the power of money, how the money works, my dear friends.
Mhm.
First of all, I hats up for outstanding presentation by Dr. John Sir. You nailed it because we have to understand how money works first. This is not a task to control or regulate the money, my dear friends. But what is the biggest asset of your life? Your time, your money, your talent, your body, your mind, your wisdom power, and network and community power. These are a great asset of your life, ultimate way. But when you are going to empower financial breakthrough, we have to always understand the power of risk management, asset
Mhm.
management, tax planning, estate management, cash management, how cash flow, income distribution, and how you will be become billionaires. Okay, and all the billionaires have the billionaire mindset, but we have to understand world is calling you. We have to also uplift the global humanity. When we are earning a money, a few parts of our, a few drops of ocean of the wealth, we have to uplift for the global humanity. We have to do philanthropist work. This is need of our emergency plan. We have to make it. How we are going to get a financial breakthrough? First, financial chaos is there all the times. Where I have to invest, we have to understand the power of investment. Albert Einstein, the man of a century of 20th century, I am saying, he said that compound interest is the one of the biggest wonders of the 21st century of the world. In 20th century of the world, I meant to say that compound interest always work on a long-term basis. Okay, if you want to generate a big wealth, compound interest matters in your life. Must be financial avoidance, financial awareness, literacy should be there, financial stability, financial security, financial freedom. Then we will be seeing financial fulfillment of your life. This is all about financial wealth generation, my dear friends. But I want to quote Warren Buffett. He said that if you want to invest your money, my dear friends, rule number one says that first rule of investment is that don't lose your money. Yes, don't lose your money. Respect your money all the time. Second rule of investment is that don't forget rule number one. So what does it mean? It means that we have to nurture wealth creation all the times. We have to control it, and we have to create a financial literacy. And we are going to get a big numbers of people. We will be the next billionaire of this planet. But you are a company, my dear friends. You have to keep top class financial team, legal department. Why? Sometimes you will be trapped. We have to keep your financial team, a legal department. They will provide you immunity power so that overall, in a broader perspective, what I'm saying that this is not easy to create a wealth generation. It takes a time, but it's a matter how you preserve your wealth and how you are um, distributing all those wealth for uplifting the global humanity, building your family, building your lifestyle. This is true meaning. Either you can invest in a real estate, whatever you are just starting entrepreneurs company, startup company, my dear friends, and you are just following your passion, skill. But ultimately, we have to remember that the power of money is just like a mammoth task, robust task to manage all the times. Okay. Thank you so much. I had of OPassion Singapore, Malaysia global webinar, a magnified and dignified, highly distinguished team, a top class team. You have organized such a fabulous session, awesome session. I love it all the way. Keep rocking. The best moment is coming on passive, and we will be just like a flying in the sky, just like a bird, my dear friends. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Sister Mavel Chan. Wow, let's see. How are you, Sister Mavel Chan? Hey, sister, he was not smiling. What is happening? Thank you so much, Sister Marvel and Mr. Kumaran, Fetu, and Florence, all the great team of OPassion. I heard of each and every one. Wonderful job, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank, thank you,
So
Brother
over to you.
Raj. Thank
Any
you.
hands, sister? Over to you.
Mhm. Thank you, Brother Raj. Okay, Mabel.
Okay. Thank you, Raj, for watching over my smile. intensely listening. Uh, uh, Dr. John, I have a couple or a few questions, but mine is the basic of the basic. Okay, Dr. John, where are you? Okay, mine is the basic of the basic because your whole presentation tell us the purpose, the reason, the benefits. But mine is really how to even go ahead to kickstart a trust. For example, when you say, "Good, Singapore have got companies that take care of that we can care of our trust to be," but they are private companies. So, are these private companies even trustworthy? What if after 5 years they close down? Who actually run these private companies? I know it's in Singapore. I could do my own due diligence, but just in case you have already done it, who are these? It's private limited. They can shut the company down in 5 years, 10 years if they are not making enough money. Then in other countries where there are no private companies, who takes care of your trust? Is it the government department?
No. So if you think about it, Sister Mabel, I mean, that's a good question. A trust, when I started, I talked about the history. The trust at the end of the day is managed by the trustees.
Mm,
And those trustees could be a trustee of your trust could even be your CPA, it could be your lawyer, it could be an uncle. When Mr. Vital was talking, he mentioned the idea of the irrevocable and revocable because that's the two things we want to talk. We all need both of them. I'm sorry, I'm taking a long way around to answer your question. We need both of them. The revocable trust is the one that has to have your will, which has your will, it has your financial power of attorney, which says what do I or who makes the decisions if I'm no longer mentally able to make financial as well as healthcare directives for that. Those are their living and revocable trust because you are going to be changing it and you are the one managing it during your lifetime. When you pass away, most people put in their will that their assets be shared to different children or whatever. And what we're saying is that a consideration could be that you instead put your trust now to be that final beneficiary. So your assets don't go to your kids or to family members, they go to the trust. And that trust, we are proposing that wherever you go to set up the trust that is going to be doing this multi-generational, you and your attorneys should be looking at irrevocable, which means whoever sets up that trust and puts the assets in it is not the one that is managing the trust. It's not the trustee. So your son, your daughter, your mother, whatever, you can actually have your family members are members of that board of trustees. So you could choose that if that trust was not created by you, say maybe your attorney or some other, your uncle or a grandparent created that trust for you, you are not the creator of that trust. You can become the trustee. And between you and your family members, you are managing it. Let's say you get to a point that you're no longer there. You could have you have listed in those trust documents what you call the succession trustees, successive trustees who would basically succeed you and become the trustees, continue managing. Chances are that you could have kids that maybe they didn't really want to manage it or they start having quarrels. So you could actually either appoint an external company like a private trust company to be managing that trust as the trustee, or you can use some of these international companies to be managing the trust. And once you put in that trust document and give it the flexibility to appoint an external trustee, people also, your lawyer will help you to put somebody that they call a protector trustee. And that protector trustee's role is nothing other than to just be watching over the shoulders of the trustee to make sure they're doing a good job, and they can fire them anytime and replace the trustees. So we are not saying you hand over your assets to some company out there that is going to just be managing it nilly-willy. When you set up that trust with the attorneys and they create that trust document, they create specific boundaries. I could say that my children are the successor trustees that are going to take over from me. But if they are not able to, I would say that company A, B, or C could be put in to run that trust for 2 years, for 1 year, forever. So there is a lot of flexibility there. It's not that you just went in there and signed a check and gave it to some guy and then came and kept your fingers crossed. No, you are in complete control when you are setting up that trust. And that is probably the most important part of the trust creation, making sure that those trust deeds or the trust documents are specific enough to think long term, but also build in enough flexibility for how things may change. And the lawyers would really help you out there. That's why I was saying, please, please, please don't go download some forms on the internet and say create a trust, and you just create them and sign them, because you may not be very compliant. Yeah.
Okay, that also answer. That means confirm for the trust, we need a lawyer to draft the terms and conditions.
Absolutely. And that's why I made the mention of the fact that as I've been in the financial services industry, there are a couple of, like this in the US, there are two companies that one of our financial platforms utilize. One of them is really like more like for US, and one of them has international experience. I'm not saying that's the only company I will recommend to anybody. In fact, that I don't want to easily recommend, at least publicly. I can talk to somebody in person and say, these are the two people I'm using. You do a due diligence on them and interview them and see whether they can provide you with the service. And then, as I said, you guys in Singapore, you have a lot of companies that actually help people in creating the trust. They will tell you that they'll manage them, but you can choose to set up your own private trust company to manage it. And that private trust company, if you remember on the slide, and I shared the slides there, it has, you can have almost your family members that are going to be managing it. If you think about it, recently, in the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, I think it was in the news that Melinda Gates finally stepped down as the executive vice president or something like that. So the Bill and Melinda Gates, the executive of it was Melinda Gates. So it's basically Bill and her that are the people that were running that trust. And so I'm not advocating that you just throw it over the fence and hope that they'll take care of your generation. No, the key word is control. You want to make sure you have the levers to be able to control.
Okay. Yeah, I think the end of the day is the lawyer, and for our own due diligence to
Yes,
start the ball rolling. And I think it is an expensive journey to engage. We probably have to wait for the apples to come. It's, I mean, but some of us know where the apples will go. So we probably can begin to think about how the money need to be channeled. But at the end of the day, the trust is something probably we can only set up when the apples come. Correct?
I would say that you should do it that way, because if you go out there and you speak to somebody and you say you want to form a trust, you may find somebody quote you something as little as $200 all the way up to $20,000, depending on
Yeah.
how complex it is. So, but the $200 would almost invariably be the revocable living trust, which is just your will,
Mm.
which is important for us to have. Anybody should actually at least have a will right now. But then looking at the complex trust, like having your charitable trust, that's going to do your philanthropic work. That is something that you need to actually think about it and engage somebody.
I'm done, Jeannie. Thank you, Dr. John. I'm done.
Thank you, Mabel, and thank you, Dr. John. Dr. John, I have a question. Uh, like for the trust, right? Because I have found out about it before, but I find that it is too costly uh, for just a layman, to do a trust. It's too costly compared to if, let's say, we were to just write a will. Between a will and a trust, of course the will is you just writing it out and all that. What would you recommend for a layman who's, like I said, since trust is too costly, would you recommend that then they just do a simple will until when they can afford the trust, then they go into trust writing?
Yes, that's what that's what I told Sister Mabel, that the thing about having the will or having a living trust is
Mm.
basically what we all should actually have at the moment. Because if you don't have a will, no, we all have wills. At least I'm thinking about our those of us here in the US, in Singapore, in Malaysia, we at least have a will. And that will is either one that you have written or one that the government has in place for you. So you might as well write yours, because if you don't write yours, for people who are in the US, it becomes even crazy, because if my wife, something were to happen to me and she calls my bank and tells them that, oh, I just lost my husband, the first thing they say, oh, sorry for your loss, and what they'll do immediately is they freeze my account, right? So now nothing goes in or out of that account until probate. And so if I don't have that will to sort of have things in place, then the probate lawyers will jump in. So my recommendation, this is me recommending, is at least at this moment, let's all have like our basic will, even if it means one that you just write, or you can extend it to the living trust where you actually, again, those are cheap. When it comes to the more complex trust, yes, I mentioned that there could be from a few hundred to a few thousand. For those people that are in the US, one of the companies I'm working with, I kind of like what they're doing, because they are offering the trust as as a form of educational course. So you buy a course, you study, you watch a couple of videos, and then when you're done with the course, they will create the trust for you.
Mm.
And why they put it that way, because it's a non-for-profit organization, and why they do it that way is that you now can actually take, as a business person, you can write off the cost of that course
Mm.
as a business expense. So for the people in the countries that it apply, I'm actually evaluating that, because I think it's going to be a cheaper option. And I think uh, at the moment, I haven't seen on their list a trust that will cost more than $3,500. And I know that similar trusts with some lawyers would probably be about 10,000 plus.
Mm.
So that's something I'm evaluating. The other company that I said, um, it's more international. What they do is they have a team of international lawyers on a platform, and then they say they can deal with any country. That one tends to be a bit more expensive, but at least that is a company that has some credibility, and at least you can know that they have that expertise. So don't go doing any complex trust yet. Just go study, go find out as much information as you can find out, and then we can share with each other as we go along the way. And when it's the right time, you know, maybe 10,000 will not be an issue if you're trying to protect 100 million.
Yeah, yes,
Mhm.
correct.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr.
Sister
John.
Jeannie, Sister
Yeah,
Jeannie, I have a question.
sure. Go ahead.
Uh, Brother John, okay, I have seen, this is a movie story in movies, in Tamil movies. See, basically, these rich people, what happens? He, the rich man, when the father is dies, he hand over the wealth to the trustee because the children is below 18 years old. So what
Mhm.
happened? The trustee, they bad guys. So they try to kill the children, and they want to take over the trust. Okay, the wealth. So is this can happen in a real life? I just want to know.
I, I don't I don't know, but maybe if somebody thought about it to write it in the movie, then it's possible. But no, the honest truth there, I mean, Brakumarang, is again, this is where you talk about that anticipating. I bring back the story of this guy who's thinking about 370 years. So you may put there that in the absence of, if that beneficiary dies young, or if that beneficiary is no longer there, where do those assets go? So that guy really needs to go on a killing spree to make sure that they can do it, because one of the things you have to remember is that, and which brings me to a very important point. Many of us, because of probably the same type of movie situations, and that's something I have seen with families, is that, you know, the husband is kind of suspicious that if I tell my wife about my life insurance, she'll kill me because she's the beneficiary. And then everybody starts second guessing each, and what happens is, you get those documents, you get those policies or whatever, and you hide them from your family members. When you hide them and you pass away and nobody ever discovers that those assets exist, at least here in the US, sometimes they will end up with the states. And if after a while nobody ever shows up to claim them, then they belong to the state. So when it comes to the creation of the estate plans and the trusts, this becomes a very, very important family discussion. And I'm not advertising, but I had told people a lot of time that this book, I read the pages out of this book. It's called Entrusted. I love it. And it's actually by some guy called David York. And he says, building a legacy that lasts. I don't know who this person is, but guess what? I read this book, and one of the very first chapters that the book talks about is the idea that when you do the planning, the entrusted families know who they are and what they believe. So when you do this planning and you do it as a family, then when you have created that document, the trustees have a copy of it, your lawyers have a copy of it, your beneficiaries have a copy of it. Now, that trustee now needs to know that, oh, by the way, I'm not the only one who has the secret. And that way, this stuff that we saw in the movie will not play itself unless
Mm.
the person created it in secret and hid it from everyone. So make sure that they're informed, and especially with the charitable ones, make sure you engage the younger generation, because they're the ones that are going to carry on that mission.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm. Thank you, Brother John. Okay. If there is no more question, Mabel, shall
Yes.
we close? Yeah.
Yeah, we need to close soon.
Okay.
Please thank Dr. John and for him to say the last word.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, thank you once more. Bra Kumarang, I said, thank you for giving me the puffy hair. Thank you. and, and I was like, when they looked at it, I said, like, I think I'm gonna take a a screenshot and send to my kids and say, look at that, look at how daddy looked used to
Yeah,
be so
yeah.
it used to be so handsome. But Sister Jenny and Sister Mabel, this platform, I really enjoy what you guys have been doing, and I know Mr. Brajan Barella, you guys have been hanging around and providing all the support and so on. I wanna thank all of you. We are on a journey, and
Yes.
OnPassive has given us the opportunity to create this interconnected global family. And the only thing that we can do is, you know, help each other. Is as you know, I remember we did a team building where, the people have to sort of lead each other across obstacle course, and it was not the team that went first, but the team that were able to bring everybody across
Mm,
and always being
mm,
in contact.
mm,
That is what we should do here. Um,
mm,
what I hope I have done is sort of um, thrown, like, pointed the light in one direction, and then I want you, the smart guys, to go out there now and dig up this information. Let's share it. Let's discuss it amongst ourselves, amongst people who have also had the chance to use some of these instruments. Let's share what our learnings have been, so that when it gets to a point where we need to use these tools, we know who to call, we know who to ask questions to, and we can all help each other cross that bridge. Because there is not going to be a single hero in OnPassive. We are all going to be one hero, and we only do that. Like even in the Bible, we told us that the body is one, but it's made of many parts, and we
mm,
don't want to leave one part hurting. Thank you
mm,
once more for giving me the opportunity to grace your platform. I hope it was useful, and I just hope that we can continue this learning process together. Have a good evening, have a good morning, have a good afternoon
mm.
to each and every one of you.
Yes.
Excuse me, I want to break in again. Hold it. I just want to say, Dr. John, you got me. You got me exactly. That's what I do. I just hang around everywhere I go. I'm always hanging around to support and encourage people. That's what
Amen.
I do in On Passive. Thank you. You
Amen.
got me. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
John. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
the two ones.
Yeah. Two Johns. Thank you so much. Thank you for tonight. And we really appreciate you, Dr. John, for sharing with us. And we have really learned much from you. So thank you once again. And thank you everybody who's here tonight, especially Brother John Barella, who's always here with us.
Yeah,
Tonight I see Dr.
We
Benny,
have
and she's very
we
quiet
have
here.
Dr. Benny here.
Yeah, Dr. Benny, hi. You want to say something before we close?
I came to say hello.
hello.
Good
Hello,
evening.
hello. Mhm.
I want to appreciate Dr. John
Yes.
Yes.
because you guys know it's very important for what he's doing. The
Mm,
unfortunate thing is that I always say we have 1.4 million accounts, but let me say 900 brand ambassadors, and I see only 20 something. And people
Yeah.
don't want to come and learn, but I feel sorry for them.
yep.
I appreciate each and everyone coming here.
Mm,
I just want to say God loves each and everyone. I want to thank God for bringing all of us together this
mm,
evening, this morning, this afternoon. as well as thanking him for sending someone so important to all of us, because if it wasn't for this particular individual, you and I would not be here. And his name is Mr. Ashmu Ferrer.
Yes.
He is our visionary. He wants you and I to go out there and share the vision. Are you guys ready? I see Dr.
Yes,
John
we are.
doing it. I know a lot of us, we're going to be doing it pretty soon, because there are a lot of underprivileged children that they need serious help out there. And hopefully the time will come and everything is going to be all right. Thank you all. I love you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Sister Benny. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.
Good day
Good night,
to all
everyone.
those in the day. Yeah, good. So bye-bye. We'll see you next Thursday.
Bye.
All right, good.
Bye.
Bye.